All right, ready to start? Good,
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we're going to call the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting to order. Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now commenced. It is April 7th at 4 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and to protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or announce that you are leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. So we'll do roll call. Michael Edmonds.
I am present.
Olga Flores.
Present.
Sharia Jimenez.
Present.
Jim Toffel, I'm here. Liz Wilson. Liz, you're on mute.
I'm here.
Jay Young.
Here.
Mindy Bernstein.
Present.
And Lori Mazurbo.
Present.
All right, wow, 100%, I love it. Good job, guys. Okay, ex officio members, Maggie Amado Tellez. Okay, Maggie is absent. Wendy Asher.
Present.
Marianne Bierling just texted me. She is driving back right now from Casa Grande, and so she'll be with us probably a little late. Mark Clark. Here's Mark is absent. Casino. Vicky is also absent. Marcos Ismail.
I'm here.
Betty Villegas. Betty. Okay, Corin Manning.
Present.
And Liz Morales.
Here.
Okay. So first, second agenda item is to review the adoption of the March 3rd meeting minutes. The meeting minutes have been posted on our website. I have one minor modification, but I need to pull them up again. On agenda item number 2, it says Michael Edmonds did the call to the audience, and I think that was a holdover from February. So we could change that to my name. There we go. Anybody else have a change for the March meeting minutes? Okay, well, without objection, the meeting minutes are approved. Okay, third agenda item is a call to audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development due to time constraints. The total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting laws, commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. So is there anyone who would like to speak?
Jim, I just put my hand up.
Yes, I'm Mindy.
Hi. I was asked by a number of people to, I've invited people to join that they don't yet. I was asked to present some feedback to the commission as an audience person. Is that possible or allowable?
Yes, go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. There are a number of individuals who I spoke with that with a great deal of passion spoke about all of the empty buildings in malls and empty Kmarts and empty large buildings that could be used for housing and support for people who are experiencing homelessness. And they are confounded why that is not happening. I said I have no answers for that, but that I would bring it to the commission. That's it. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody.
For what it's worth, I have had conversations with Paul Cunningham about the Kmart and trying to figure out a way to convert that space into affordable housing project. But it's a little complicated because the city would have to condemn the property and it would take a while to make that happen. But I know that some of those discussions are occurring in the background. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Yeah, I just was going to comment too that, you know, from an architectural perspective and construction perspective, rehabs are not easy to do. They actually are very expensive and very time consuming. And you would think, oh, there's a building here, but to actually try to repurpose that for, you know, housing, which, you know, you have all these standards of quality you have to meet, you know, you don't just want to throw people in there and, you know, let the, you know, you would have to meet a ton, you know, it just rehab. And I feel like where our zoning code really fails us is that it's at the point where it's easier to sprawl and to spread out and to just start over brand new on a vacant piece of land than to try to repurpose anything. I mean, it's just really, it's really hard to do, you know. That's why it's not happening. It's, you know, otherwise we would see it happening if it was easy.
Jim, if I can step in for a moment, just a caution to commissioner members. This item is not on our agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So please refrain from talking about this. If you want, go ahead, put it on for a future agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak before we move to the next agenda item? Okay, agenda item number 4 is update on adding our new Housing Commission members as voting members. So Ernesto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. ACD has forwarded to the mayor and council a recommendation by Director Morales for the youth representative. We hope that mayor and council will take action as soon as it gets on the agenda. We have identified a vibrant young person who works with Del Rio, a recent graduate of the University of Arizona, and she is full of heart and passion and works in public health. We also have asked the city council offices, specifically, of course, city council members, to please nominate a replacement for Maniqua Lane. And as you recall, it takes 2 council members to come to an agreement, and we can send that full council, mayor and council. We don't have that yet, but we're working on that. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
So I guess, Ernesto, a question from that I have is, one of the things we've been discussing for some time is bringing on our ex officio members as voting members. Has that also been part of the conversation?
Ann, do you have an answer for that?
It's in process, but it takes a little while with getting it agendized. but in motion.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Ernesto? CJ?
I actually have a question. The youth representative that's being brought to mayor and council, are they between the ages of 18 and 21, or is that being modified in some way?
I thought the ages is the range is 18 to 24. Am I?
You're right.
Correct
I'm
on
sorry. It is 18 to 24. Yeah.
And this person does qualify.
Okay, CJ?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to mention, I think we talked about this before, but I know that Councilman Dahl is happy to facilitate that process, and I'm happy to sort of move things forward if that's helpful. I think the last time we spoke, as far as now that the youth representative, if that person needs to be nominated by a council member, I'm happy to try to make sure that that happens and talk to Council Member Dahl. And then as far as the other replacement, my understanding was, I mean, we would definitely take the recommendation of HCD if there's somebody there that Ms. Morales or if Liz or Ann are recommending. I think it's something that's not really on Councilmember Dahl's, not at the top of his list, but if there's a recommendation and it's a matter of us just like checking them out and saying this person looks great, I'm happy to make that happen.
Thank you, CJ. Again, for the youth representative, Director Morales has made the recommendation to mayor and council, so that will go forward as her appointment,
Okay.
Pending approval from mayor and council. As for the other seat, be happy to send you out a list of the names from last year or that were originally considered, and your office, of course, can converse with the other council members.
And that sounds good. Just to clarify, because I think, Ann, we talked about this, if there's a list and these are folks who haven't been contacted in a year or however long, if we want to just reduce that list to a couple or even, to a smaller group of people that we know are still interested, I think that would expedite things.
Okay, thank you, CJ. Can we let the meeting minutes show that Maggie Tejas has joined us? Mindy?
Thank you, Jim. Should the proposal go through with ex officio members becoming voting members, will we be bringing on new ex officio members that are non-voting?
I'm not sure I have an answer for that.
Neither do I. I don't have an answer for that.
What do you think, Mindy?
The motion that was made by the commission did not include that. That said, the commission can discuss and do another motion if the commission does want to do additional ex officio members. But the commission that at this point is moving forward is converting the 5 non-government ex officio seats to be voting members.
I guess just thinking about that question, in an effort not to make too many changes too quickly, maybe the best thing to do is if we can get the ex officio members converted over to voting members and then do a checkpoint at that point. And if we think we need to bring on some new ex officios, we could do it at that time. Liz?
I was going to say exactly what you said, Jim. Also, just like don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. So I think that it would be great for more members of the public to start attending meetings so that they can get a feel for what's happening. And we can get a feel for members of the public who have interest, if it's even really there. And I think doing a 1-to-1 ratio of adding that many ex officio members might be quite a lot for us to try to manage.
Yeah. Joe?
I just wanted to reiterate some previous comments I'd made. Expanding the commission with voting members and or appointing new ex officio members could be a really good opportunity to get a more diverse group of voices into the commission. And I hope that this isn't simply converting ex officio members to voting members and then doing nothing else, because that does the opposite. That just makes the same people who can show up to the meetings and already have a voice here, that just makes them into voting members, and you don't get to seize that opportunity if that's all you're doing. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay, any other comments or questions before we move to the next agenda item? Okay, agenda item number 5 is the subcommittee updates. The first subcommittee is the housing segregation. Jay Young, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, everybody. And I do have an update today. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I believe, the housing segregation subcommittee has been meeting regularly, and what we've been doing is really diving into this idea of equity as it relates to housing. I think that, we all agree that affordable housing is a critical issue. We need more of it. That's not been really something that we've been debating. But I do think where we are really focusing is, affordable housing is certainly something we need to concentrate on, but this piece of equity and what equity means in this discussion is critically important and something that we're really trying to bring to the table. Being that we're the housing segregation subcommittee, we're starting from the point that, housing is segregated in this community as it is throughout the entire nation due to mostly policies in the 20th century, both from the public sphere and the private sphere as well. And I think what we have been looking at is, trying to educate ourselves about what those things are or were, and, what things are today still creating housing segregation or keeping it in place, and how that is affecting equity. And I think that, obviously not every equity issue is related to race and ethnicity, but certainly a lot of them are. And so we've been talking about things like source of income protection. What goes along with that is where people are using their Section 8 vouchers. And it turns out it's generally in areas of high segregation and high poverty. We've been talking about things that I don't think we've really been discussing much as a commission, and obviously that's why we have the subcommittees, but lending discrimination is still a big issue. People of color are still 2 to 3 times more likely to be denied a mortgage as compared to similarly situated white people. Appraisal bias is getting a lot of attention nationally now. We're talking about, again, houses in high minority concentration areas being appraised for considerably less than similar houses in white areas. And there's a lot that goes along with, who are appraisers and kind of what are the rules that they use. That onion is starting to be peeled back a little bit. Health disparities, right? Again, depending on where you live, your life expectancy could be 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years lower than if you live in a different part of town. There's evidence in other parts of the country of continued steering. Again, real estate agents showing people houses in particular areas because they think that's where they would probably want to live based on their race. Criminal background, another huge issue in terms of equity. If you are coming out of the system, the chances of you finding decent, safe, affordable housing close to opportunity is slim. I mentioned Section 8 usage. I mentioned access to credit. Another thing, Community Reinvestment Act obligations, right? Banks have obligations to the communities where they do business. And that's an issue that, again, the commission hasn't really addressed and we haven't talked about. So there are a lot of issues that are affecting housing equity and whatnot in Tucson. And I think that where we have landed as a subcommittee is that we want to know more about those things. I mean, we know that we've got the HASS plan, we've got the PCHIP plan, we've got the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And all of those are good and they're a good start, but I think ultimately feel like there's still a missing piece here where we need to dive more deeply into the issues affecting equity. And again, this huge piece that revolves around race and ethnicity still today, unfortunately. We have looked at some different plans and reports there. About 5 years ago, the federal government required jurisdictions to complete assessments of fair housing. It was a new, much more robust type of study that really looked at and focused on public participation to get folks that are living throughout the community, not just certain voices, to talk about housing equity, housing segregation, and doing a much deeper dive into race and ethnicity and how that issue is affecting housing equity more generally. So I think, again, where we have landed as a subcommittee is we would like to see the commission as a whole recommend to mayor and council that a similar study be undertaken. And again, whether it's a study like an assessment of fair housing or something a little bit different, I think that, again, the reason that we think that something like that is important as we go forward is to, and again, this is just kind of where we've landed as a subcommittee, is that it doesn't really feel like we are operating from a place of a foundation where we all kind of have an understanding about what are the various equity issues affecting our community, what are some potential things that can be done about them, and what the city's plan is to do so. And again, I certainly do not want to belittle the hard work that the city staff has done around the HASS plan, PCHIP, the AI. I mean, there are a lot of good building blocks there, but I think we just are feeling like we need more. So where we landed, again, is a suggested action for the commission as a whole to ask mayor and council to conduct a regional housing assessment similar to like the North Texas Regional Housing Assessment that assesses fair housing and equity related housing issues at a deeper level than what we have seen so far. So with that, I know there was a lot there, but I'm certainly happy to answer questions. And if anybody else on the housing segregation subcommittee has anything else to add, please do so. But that's what we are bringing as our action item to the full commission.
Thank you, Jay. Mindy?
Thank you. Jay, that was awesome. There was one other demographic that I was thinking might be added to, besides health and ethnicity, is disability. And specifically for me, it's individuals that are indigent with serious mental illnesses and substance use disorders. Huge inequity in that demographic, which I won't take time up right now to talk about, but just pointing it up as important to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Mindy. Yeah, great point. And I would encourage the commissioners to look at, if you just Google assessment of fair housing. I know Philadelphia has done one, Dallas has done one. The disability is certainly part of that, a piece of that puzzle. I just kind of touched on a couple of things that could be included, but certainly that is a piece of the puzzle. So yeah, thank you for that, Mindy.
Shay?
Yeah, I was just wondering too how the study obviously also, do they go into, class as well? Because what's interesting to me when I look like, income levels, because when I look at the maps of race in Tucson and then you overlay the map of income, you would think like maybe the two would relate, but they don't. It actually is, those patterns are very different also. And so I'm just curious if that's also in the.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, we were just using the assessments of fair housing as an example. And I think, Shay, you're kind of touching on where, you know, equity doesn't always have to do necessarily with race and ethnicity. And, you know, obviously looking at income and how that is distributed is certainly, I think, another piece of the puzzle as well.
Liz?
Yeah, so something that I would encourage you to take a look at within like this recommendation to Mayor and Council is trying to get input from workers who work in direct services and also the people that they serve on ways that they experience discrimination. I know when I was working at HIV services, landlords found ways to discriminate against our clients that explicitly didn't meet the criteria of fair housing, but were still discriminatory. So for example, a landlord once told me, I'm not gonna rent to any of your clients anymore, they're all drug addicts. And being an active drug user does not violate fair housing laws. However, discriminating against someone for perceived past drug use does. So they're really smart in terms of ways that they do discriminate.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Jay before we move to the next update?
So I guess, Jim, before we move on, you know, again, we were bringing an action item to the commission at large. I'm not sure, you know, how we would move that forward, or, I mean, I guess my question, and I appreciate the feedback. My question to the commission is, you know, how does this land? I mean, do others feel like we have enough information to really truly understand equity as it relates to housing in Tucson, and do we need more information? Because if not, you know, this doesn't really land. But if others are kind of in the same boat about, you know, really kind of planting the flag about what does equity mean to us as a commission, as a city, and what we do about it, then I think this is something to move forward. I mean, the other thing I would add here is, I don't know if y'all heard, but it got almost no attention. The city did just hire the chief equity officer finally. And I think that, you know, something that a study like this would do would be to obviously engage that position. And, you know, I'm curious as to why that person is not here. I'm getting a little bit off track, but since I've got the floor, I thought I'd mention that as well. So anyway, I guess to the larger commission, does this land, and is this something that we want to take to mayor and council, or, you know, do we want to talk about it a little bit more? Or do we just, is this not important?
Jay?
Hi, Jay. Thank you. That's exactly what I was gonna message. I was gonna say, where's Sarah Lani? You know, yeah, I think that we should do something for sure. I don't know if it makes more sense to bring them in, that department in first, and then make the motion. I think there might be a little bit of more coordination that needs to happen before we make a motion. But definitely, I think let's keep that at the top of the agenda and figure out how, you know, how to move that forward.
Maybe in that sense, Shay, maybe what the better motion is, or I don't even know what, but that this topic gets its own spot on the agenda for the next meeting, so that we can dig into it a little bit more deeply. Because again, you know, this was just an idea for something to move forward.
Okay, so what would that be? What would you want the title of that agenda item to be, Jay?
How about something like discussion of kind of what type of information we want to kind of put me on the spot here.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you know, what kind of information, and what do we feel like we need as a commission to be able to move forward and kind of take the next step in our progress as a group? And, you know, whether that's a study or, you know, something else, but, you know, something digging in more deeply to exploring the equity issues that we need to more information about, and to understand the action potentially that the city's going to take. So did you get all that? I mean, that was real short there.
I took a couple of notes, so we'll
Okay.
find. Liz?
I have a question. When are we next due to provide an update or anything like that to mayor and council? Does anyone know?
Yeah, so it's due. We actually, that's agenda item number 7. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit.
So perhaps we could include this topic and the information that we provide to mayor and council as a commission update. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Mindy?
Liz, could you repeat that?
I'm suggesting that we provide whatever recommendation or update regarding next steps to mayor and council in the next update we provide to them, which is due shortly.
Okay, thank you. I love where you're going with this, Jay. And I think that I'm fully supportive of the concept of having more discussions about equity and what does that mean and where do we dig in. And I love your idea of having a assessment of fair housing conducted here in Tucson to help with some of that. So I back you up 100%. Anything that if I could make a motion, I would, but I don't know what it would be. Thank you for that work that you did in the committee, the subcommittee.
Jim, this is Ann Charles from Ward 6, and I just want to make a comment as a person who has been involved in city politics and everything for many, many, many years. It is so important that the council and Sarah Lanius and everyone be involved in this, because I have seen a lot of times that commissions do their best work and really come forward with great ideas, but there's no buy-in because the council hasn't been involved, representatives haven't been involved, and there's no one from the city kind of, letting everybody know here what it is. And I think Sarah's the perfect person to do that. So I really want to strongly encourage you to make sure that there's that linkage that's happening, because it's so important that all of the council and the mayor are part of the process and the way you're making decisions, so that when you present what you want to present, it's not something new, it's something that they have seen and they're comfortable with.
Okay, thank you, Ann. So I think in line with that, we should invite the equity director to the next commission meeting, if this is, assuming this is going to be on the agenda. Mindy?
Jim, if I can.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say the equity officer is not Sarah. It is Laurice Walker. So, and Sarah does the community safety, health, and wellness. So if we want to invite Sarah on her work, I think that would be a good idea too.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Any other comments for Jay or questions? Okay, next item is the Housing First, which is formerly called the Permanent Supportive Housing. Liz, you have the floor.
Thank you. So we have not been able to meet, and hopefully with the change of the commission members, we can get that back off the ground. I will share, just as a side update, we just completed a second presentation to mayor and council that was just done this past Tuesday. So I would encourage everyone to watch that. And we have the full support of mayor and council around all the efforts underway to address homelessness. There's, of course, a desire to do a lot more. And so we'll continue to work and carry out the will of mayor and council. One of the things that is new is that we're trying to work on is a 24/7 resource line around homelessness. And so that's another piece of that. But I think, again, we have the full support of mayor and council on the efforts we're doing with the hotel that we have and the other 2 sites, and just continuing that work.
Great. Mindy?
Thank you for a issue. city. Whereas before had a different funding schemes in our community. It's a trend nationally right now for indigent care to be managed by for-profit insurance companies, and that the city is stepping in and doing the work that I believe the behavioral health agency is responsible for having provided. Not to get too political, but I'm just so relieved to hear the city at least is attending to our homelessness as well as you are. So thanks. And that's all I'm going to say because I'll get in trouble if I continue talking. Okay, so I'll take this down.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or comments for Liz on the Housing First subcommittee? Liz Wilson?
Yeah, so I've said this, I think a couple of times at this point, that we're not meeting at all, and Liz acknowledged that, and we literally have had one meeting in the, I think like five months that we've had subcommittees. I've made the decision that I'm just going to join the housing segregation subcommittee because they are meeting and it seems like they're doing really effective work. I don't know how useful it is to the commission for us to continue to have this subcommittee that isn't functioning. So I am curious if we would be meeting our requirements to mayor and council if we only had 2 subcommittees instead of 2 and then one that's struggling.
Okay, anybody have any thoughts on that question?
I do, Jim. It's Mike.
Go ahead.
I make a suggestion. We can decide later about this, but I'll tell you what. If it's okay with everyone, Liz, if you want to go to the segregation subcommittee, I'd be interested in moving to the Housing First and trying to help move that along.
Sure, it's still not meeting though. I mean, I've been a member of it this entire time and we haven't been meeting. But if there's a ability for us to have progress with that, I totally support it.
Yeah, and if I can, we didn't meet because we didn't have the quorum that we needed. So happy to get that going if we get enough people on that, or we can make Housing First as part of the housing affordability where I'm sorry, am I saying it wrong? The Affordable Housing Committee, where we might bring up an agenda item on that in those committee meetings since it falls under that umbrella.
So there are 2 voting members on the Housing First subcommittee, correct? And so both have to be present?
Correct.
So if Mike were to join that, then one person could be absent, we'd still meet quorum and be able to meet. Correct?
Yeah, so I was hoping we would have 3 so that way as long as we have 2 out of 3, we could make it. So, again, making sure it's a meeting time that works for everyone's schedule, but happy to try to revisit that.
So Mike, Liz, if you're interested in, Liz Wilson, if you're interested in staying on it and Mike was interested in joining, then, I think, it's a technicality that's causing the group not to meet. I don't think it's a lack of value per se. What do you guys think about trying that? And if it still doesn't work, then we can start looking at other steps.
I'd like to hear the opinions of Jay and Liz Morales and Liz Wilson.
I think Housing First is important. So if we can have a good committee on it, I think it's worth the effort.
What's causing the lack of quorum? I mean, that's the issue, not whether or not it's a necessary or good idea to have the subcommittee, right?
Right. So It was just scheduling, not sure that everyone can meet. So if we throw out a time and the people who want to serve on the committee say it works, then we can do that.
All right, Joe, and then Ann.
Out of curiosity, is there any rule we have that keeps a member from being a voting member on 2 subcommittees?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Ann?
Yeah, just one clarification. The subcommittees have to have 3 voting members on it, but Liz, you're absolutely correct. Only 2 would be needed to meet quorum at a subcommittee meeting. And so I think part of the challenge there was with only 8 voting members currently, there wasn't enough for all the committees. But Joe, to your point, if somebody's super eager, they can absolutely join more than one subcommittee.
Okay, so I believe we've got 2 options on the table then. So the first option is to add a voting member to the subcommittee and try to keep it going. The second option would be to try to roll the Housing First subcommittee into the Affordable Housing subcommittee. So I guess the first question is, do we have a volunteer, somebody who would like to join the Housing First subcommittee?
I will, Sir Jim.
All right, Mike, thank you. So do we need to make a vote to add him or how does that work? Do they may know? And Liz, I'll call on you. Second here. Probably should make a motion just to keep it in the meeting minutes. So Liz, let's let Liz and Mindy talk, and then we'll go back to that. Liz.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that it's largely a question of efficacy. And I know that no one has said that they feel it's ineffective, but if we're not getting together to even do anything for the opportunity to be effective or not, I think that's an issue. But also, it has a lot of redundancy to me. It's been brought up by City of Tucson members before that TPCH exists for Housing First. And I completely support this still being an important point, but I think that homelessness can be addressed in both other subcommittees, and I don't want to spread the commission too thin and have people who are in a subcommittee that they just don't want to be in.
Okay, Mindy.
Thank you. I thought that one of the reasons why we expanded the ex officio members is so that we could bring more people on board to specifically the Housing First subcommittee. And I would like to make a motion that Michael be accepted as one of the new members of the Housing First. Liz, I hear you about diluting our efforts. Liz Wilson. And I think that it's an important committee. So Michael, it would be wonderful if you would join us. So I make a motion.
Thank you, Mindy. We have a motion to add Michael Edmonds to the Housing First subcommittee. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second, Jen.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Liz. So seconded by Liz Wilson. Is there any discussion before we put it to question? Okay, hearing none, I'll go ahead and do the roll call. Mike Edmonds.
I think I'm an aye.
Olga Flores.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Liz Wilson.
Aye.
Jay Young,
Aye.
Mindy Bernstein,
Aye.
and Lori Mazurbo.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate that. And I think let's see how the next month or two go. If we need to come back and revisit this, let's do it. So any other comments before we move to affordable housing?
Sorry.
Okay. Shay, you have the floor.
Hi everybody. Yeah, we went through a lot. I felt really great about our last meeting. I feel like we're finally getting into the meat and teeth of what we want to do with this housing subcommittee. So we all came with a bunch of recommendations. I have everything listed here. A lot of it had to do with, we're really trying to figure out, just more or less action items and things we can move on to advance affordable housing. So we had great suggestions from Marianne Bierling about zoning, looking at ways to create more walkable cities. There was a lot of discussion about ways to bring in more funding. I think we were all interested in looking at and starting similar to what we're talking about with Sarah Lanius, bringing in the right people and from the right department to talk about what pieces we can move, and starting to understand better the landscape of taxes and which department we need to talk to. I've been having, a lot of great conversations with other people too about just looking, every time you do a construction project, there's all kinds of money that's flowing, right? Money is just flowing between the construction sales tax and the impact fees and the permit fees. But what it's been interesting for me to find is we're peeling back the layers is how little, almost none of that money actually goes back to the Department of Development Services. And, but anyway, so again, I think it's just, we want to start bringing in, again, the right people from the right departments to begin having these conversations to figure out what pieces we can and can't move. And I think it'll definitely be the same with the zoning conversations as well. But the taxes, I feel like for myself personally, I know I understand the least of those systems. And so again, I think similar to what you're doing, Jay, we need to first uncover the layers and look at the larger systems map. And I really feel like we're headed in that direction with our housing subcommittee, which is great. We talked a lot about Megan Headings, speaking of impact fees, was talking about reducing impact fees, creating fast tracks, again, to get through the process of development services quicker. Again, almost everyone mentioned zoning. Jim Toffel, David Wall, zoning flexibility, parking count waivers or reduction, reimbursement of city sales tax for offsite improvements, project-based vouchers if available, expedited review. I mean, we all were pretty much in consensus of the pieces that we feel would be the most helpful to advance affordable housing. I think what's the next work in our subsequent meetings is figuring out how we get there and how we make the motions again and bring the recommendations to city council. There was something else that came up. There was an overlap where I felt we needed to bring in, it was good the county was there because we were all, I think the number one priority, I think for most of us was talking about how we get a GEO bond passed through. So a general obligation bond for affordable housing specifically, and begin to make the motions there. Let's see, so mine, general obligation bond was a common agreement. Let's see, I mentioned the flexible lot development option because I think that is one of the few provisions in our code where affordable housing is explicitly laid out. But using that option in the code is very cumbersome, and it's come up I started to get into the weeds with Sarah Megas, and we were looking at the history of some of that. The last development project that went through kind of was like, got political with Steve Kay had wrote up the whole thing on it in his newsletter about, but similar conclusions, just how complicated that section of the code is and how difficult it is to use. And it basically required this volley of lawyers back and forth to figure out how it was interpreted. So, you know, again, our code is just has become over time increasingly complex and difficult to use. And that's a common theme. Jason Heisley, parking reductions, increasing subsidy, reducing, you know, it's basically with affordable housing, trying to reduce your expenses, you know, increasing your funding sources. Olga also mentioned, you know, a lot about, you know, the need for other types of housing, you know, and especially home ownership. And Betty echoed that a lot as well. Marcos brought great information. Tax exemptions for affordable housing. Yeah, he said most subsidies require 30-year ownership, which can be, okay. So yeah, Marcos gets into the details with us, which is great. Joe mentioned exploring more co-ops. Maggie was talking about purchasing more existing homes and putting them into the land trust. Sarah Megason mentioned performing, oh, that was really cool. We got into a discussion about performing a buy down on houses to help subsidize development that was happening in Denver and the housing authority she was working with before, which I thought was an interesting idea, an interesting program. Yeah, I think we have a lot to learn from Sarah Megason as well, because again, she was working on very similar issues and, you know, with the housing authority in Denver. So yeah, so we had a really, really great discussion. Jim or Olga, do you guys want to add to that?
I thought the meeting went really well. You know, just kind of bringing it up a level. The goal that the Affordable Housing Subcommittee is trying to meet is to develop a list of recommendations to give back to Mayor and Council on levers and things that the city can do to incentivize more affordable housing to get built in Tucson. And so this first session was really a brainstorming session with everybody to just kind of brain dump. These are all the things that we can think of. And I think our next meeting is going to start to try to fine tune that on, you know, what are the top 5 or 10 things we feel like are going to have the biggest impact, maybe focus on those first. So I thought the discussions went really well. There was one action item that came out of the subcommittee, and that's actually our agenda item number 6, which is the parking, doing a parking waiver. So we're going to talk about that next. But I think we're making good progress. So is there any comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you, Shay. And I think after our next subcommittee, we'll probably send out the kind of the initial list to this group, so everybody can get a better idea of the things that we're thinking. And there was one, I guess there is one small victory this last month that came up, and that was the impact fee waivers. So Mayor and Council did vote this last month to provide an impact fee waiver for all affordable housing projects, regardless of if it's a for-profit or a nonprofit. So that did get put in place, and I think that is a big deal. So there's, I think that's a good thing. That's a small victory for us. Okay, well, if there's no other comments on this, we'll move to agenda item number 6. which is the discussion on the parking waiver. So Jay is listed as the person, but I don't think Jay is the guy for this item. So there, I can talk about it, Nan, if you want to jump in. The Affordable Housing Subcommittee voted that the whole let's see here. The proposed motion from the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, the whole CEHD, so the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development, vote to recommend alongside the Planning and Commission that Mayor and Council direct staff to look at reducing parking by right for affordable housing. I'll be honest, I don't remember us saying by right, and I'm not sure what those two words, what that means to the motion, but we did vote in the subcommittee to allow a parking waiver, so reduce parking count on affordable housing projects.
So I'm happy to jump in to provide a little more context here, and I'm going to ask Corin to provide a little bit of context. So this discussion goes back to an item that Planning and Development Services is working on that Corin brought to the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. And Corin, can you just give a real quick disclaimer on what Mayor and Council is approving in April?
Yes, absolutely. And I can also try to define by right. So basically in zoning code, there's what we call the minimum standards for parking requirements. And for multifamily, that might be like 1 parking space per unit or 2 parking spaces per unit. For a commercial development, it's usually by your square footage. So, 2 parking spaces per 500 square feet, something like that. So those are standards, the minimum standards that must be met in terms of the amount of parking that is provided with any new development. So I think what we mean in terms of by right, that's what, you could also just say the minimum standard. So what the floor is in terms of parking that must be provided. There are some ways to reduce the amount of parking that is provided in a given development. We have a few tools as a city. One of them is called the individual parking plan. That allows site-specific or project-specific reductions in your required parking. So an affordable housing development could, through the individual parking plan, or really any development, could request to reduce your parking, say from 100 spaces to 80, or what have you, based on the fact that you're near a transit line or something like that. So there are certain criteria though for using that tool. One of them is proximity to transit, and there's a few others. Affordable housing has not been one of those criteria. And so right now there is a proposed code change that is going to Mayor and Council April 19th to add affordable housing as an eligible type of project to use that tool, the individual parking plan, to reduce their required parking, but that's still just on a site-specific basis. That's something that has been endorsed by Planning Commission and the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. That change going to Council this month. What I think the subcommittee supports, and this was also something that was supported by Planning Commission when they reviewed this item last month, was changing the overall minimum standard for all affordable housing. So that going forward, each affordable housing development would potentially not have to go through that extra step of requesting a parking reduction, but that their minimum would just be lower. And I just want to point out that is the minimum required by zoning that must be met in order to meet zoning standards. A project can always provide more parking if there is a reason to, based on their expected demand. But changing the minimum parking required is something that that folks have suggested as a way to reduce costs, because often we see that affordable housing parking is not fully utilized.
And
Corin, there's going to be a public hearing on April 19th, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So it'd be great to get any inputs. I encourage folks to reach out to Mayor and Council through the city clerk's office. I'll put that email address in the chat because it'd be great to get input. They always want to hear from stakeholders in terms of how people think this would benefit Tucson.
Okay, Joe.
Thanks. I think we talked a little bit about this last month, and that's a great summary, Corin. Thank you. My concern was that this is a data-driven decision. And I know I asked last time whether we had data that said in general, affordable housing developments require less parking, fewer parking spaces. And it was said that we didn't have that. But that was okay, because what we were looking at was really just making affordable housing eligible for IPPs, the individual parking plans, so that they would be evaluated on an individual basis to see whether that individual plan justified having less parking. If what we're saying is no, we really want this to be by right, then I think we need to see the data up front, and we need to see the data before we make that decision if we're not evaluating those on an individual basis. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, Ann?
I think Corin's going to say what I'm going to say, so you can go.
Yeah, just to clarify, what I think Jay and the subcommittee is suggesting is not that mayor and council make any changes to the code at this point. Really what's before them on the 19th is just that site specific change. It would actually be out of scope for them to go further than that at this time. But I think what the subcommittee is recommending is that mayor and council consider a future action and directing staff to do exactly what you're saying, Joe, and start that process of data collection and research and analysis of what would be appropriate, and come back with a more fleshed out proposal for what an appropriate parking standard would be for affordable housing. And of course, work with stakeholders like this committee and developers experienced in this area to get some of that data.
Okay, so go ahead, Mike, you've got the floor.
I fear the answer is probably going to be, I need to do a lot more reading, but in regards to the code, and if no one has the answer, it's fine. I don't expect you to, I was just asking because it came to my mind. Let's say you had a public housing property that had 400 apartments. Does anyone have any idea of how many parking spaces are generally expected of something like that?
So the parking code, I believe the way the parking code is it's 1.5 spaces for a 1-bedroom, 2 spaces for a 2-bedroom, and 2.5 spaces for a 3-bedroom. And so that's, I think, what the standard parking code is. And so we're, most of the affordable housing projects that we've done, are overparked. There's a lot of empty spaces on the projects, but I don't have the exact data or statistics on any of that. Sarah?
Yeah. So one thing, the idea is looking at it, we've heard from people, and this would be a part of the work that staff would do to assess, what this code change could look like. But we've seen, we've already seen needs of how affordable housing projects needing way less than 1 space per unit. And so the point would be that staff would look at what those needs are based off of current trends and see how that directly relates to what the code is. And Jim, you were right, you called out those quantities correctly. So I think it's hard to say off the top of the head how many it would be, just because we don't know the unit mix, we don't know how many bedrooms are in each unit, and that's how it's all broken down. But also that the IP, if staff is directed to look at a code change for adding in maybe a row just for affordable housing and it's a lower amount, there's still the opportunity for the IPP if maybe it's a project that wants to even dive deeper into that, like the cul-de-sac development up in Phoenix has no parking because they went through a whole process, for their type of development. So that the standard would be minimizing it a little bit as by right, which is that terms that it's just included in the code. And then the IPP would still allow for the affordable housing component to be in there. And then you could deep dive case by case basis as well if you needed more parking reduction too. So it could eventually become a layered kind of system as well to support more creative developments too. So I just wanted to kind of chime in, like it's not a one or the other. And the one that's moving forward now is the IPP. But, I think that the Planning Commission, after listening to that meeting, was looking at how do we simplify it even more for affordable housing.
You know, my 2 cents on this topic is I think it's a huge benefit for affordable housing developers because really it's not about the parking, it's really about the density of the project. And if you have a site that's a specific area, the amount of units you can put all on that site is always kind of driven by the parking requirements because the parking takes up so much space. There's only so much space left over. And obviously the more apartments you have, the more parking that's required. So really what this is going to do is this is going to help us increase our density of affordable housing projects on sites and create more units. You know, if we look 10 to 20 years down the road, you know, the autonomous cars right now are not, the technology is not there, the autonomous driving cars, but at some point it's going to get there. And I think as a society, as that technology improves, more and more people are going to use services like Lyft and Uber with the self-driving cars as opposed to owning vehicles. And I think we're going to have a lot of our properties that are overparked. So, you know, I feel like over time this is gonna work itself out if it doesn't right out of the gate. Any other comments before I guess we make a motion? Is there anyone who would like to make the motion to recommend alongside Planning Commission and Mayor that Mayor and Council direct staff to look at reducing parking by right for affordable housing?
I'll make the motion. I move that we direct the mayor and council members to make sure I get this right, to look at reducing by right parking requirements for affordable housing projects. Yes.
Okay, thanks. So Shay's made a motion. Is there anyone who would second that?
A second.
Thank you, Jay. Seconded by Jay. Any discussion before we put it to vote? Okay, Michael Edmonds.
Aye.
Olga Flores.
Yes.
Sharia Jimenez.
Yes.
Liz Wilshin.
Yes.
Jay Young.
Aye.
Mindy Bernstein.
Yes.
And Lori Mazurbo. Is that a yes, Lori?
Yes.
Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, thank you. And if any of you want to participate in the public comments, that is going to be, I don't remember what day.
April 19th.
April 19th at 5:30.
Yes, and I just want to point out that is that mayor and council meeting will be held in person at mayor and council chambers at City Hall.
Great, thank you, Corin. Okay, agenda item number 7 is communication with mayor and council. So this is something that I had asked that we add to the agenda. And I guess there's 2 things I was thinking with this. First, it's been a little while since we've communicated with mayor and council. Last time we did it with a letter, and I think that was good. I think what I was thinking we could do this time is have in-person meetings where each, have 1 or 2 commission members set up a meeting with each member of mayor and council. And we would provide a kind of list of bullet point talking points to help everyone with the discussion on what's happening and what we're doing and our goals and all that good stuff. What do you guys think about that? Do we want to try to do in-person meetings so that we can have a discussion and hear their feedback, or is the preference of the commission to send another letter?
Hi, Jim. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think I think it would be great to really get on people's radars and start building those relationships. Similar to other comments Anne made about, you know, having those relationships with the council members is really key to moving anything forward.
Okay, anybody else have thoughts?
I would ask, does Liz Morales have any thoughts about this?
Very
Can I get reminded on what thoughts I should have?
But just how we want to communicate with Mayor.
Oh.
If we want to do it via letter, or if we want to meet with each council member in person.
You know, so my thought about that is I think it's important on the issues that if there's an issue you feel is really critical and but if it's just a general update, I think a letter is good. But if there's some issues that we really want mayor and council to understand the full scope and context, I think that's when we want to do, you know, individual meetings.
Okay. CJ, I imagine you've got some thoughts here.
Yeah, I just want to throw it out there that just as somebody in one of the council offices, I think that a meeting is much more effective but to echo what Liz said, that's assuming there's an actual ask. If it's something, a policy that you're pushing or that you want support on, or that you want that a council member bring up at a meeting, I think it's 100 times more effective than the letter. That's just making sure that you have the council members' full attention and really makes an impression.
Okay, so go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, so I agree, and I think it would be really great if we came up with some bullet points of different topics that we've talked about throughout the year and where we'd like to see the commission moving forward towards, and see what those asks are that people are specialized or especially committed to ask for.
So I guess just kind of in line with what both CJ and with what Liz just said, it might make more sense right now then to send a letter with an update, and then in 2 to 3 months, as we have better thoughts and direction coming out of the housing segregation subcommittee and the affordable housing subcommittee and the housing first potentially, but definitely the couple, if we have recommendations or thoughts, maybe that's the time to try to set up the in-person meetings. So we do a letter now and then plan a couple months down the road to do what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, Jim, I was about to call on CJ because I knew he was here, but just to say it out loud, are there any other council member aides or assistants in this meeting at this time?
This is Anne, and I'm still in the meeting, and I think that's a great course to do, you know, as you're fundamentally coming up with what your scope is and how you want to set what it is you're going to be doing. Keeping us appraised about that in a letter would be wonderful. Also, obviously, those of us that are sitting in are going to take that back to our council people. But as you start delving into issues and making decisions, I think it's a good idea to have an in-person meeting. And I think it's always a good idea to establish early that kind of relationship, even if it's a call or a letter, just kind of letting the council know what it is that you're doing, what the direction is that you're taking, to make sure that it's in line also with how they feel, and if they have some concerns, to be able to express it. Because you don't want that to happen at the end. You want it to happen during the process.
Okay. Shay?
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if maybe it would be better just to go ahead and meet, because we're a relatively new commission. We haven't met with anybody in person yet. And even though, yeah, I agree, we don't quite have, I think, everything succinct yet, but to know, just to like kind of let people know where we're headed, I feel like we have a pretty clear sense, I don't know, but maybe
if you decide to, Ward 6 would love to meet you.
Okay, so I guess I would like to hear from the commission members what's your preference? Is it to meet with, try to set up meetings with mayor and council now, or send a letter and schedule meetings in another couple months?
This is Lori. I'd prefer to have some concrete bullet points with asks, just because I know our council people are extremely busy, and I want us to be able to have something to take to them. And I feel pretty confident that they're going to read our letter and talk about that, and would feel better if, we waited until we had some really concrete things that we could bring to them. I think that impact is greater.
I agree with Lori.
Okay.
Same here.
Okay. So
just a brief mention. My name is Chris Desborough. I represent Council Member Paul Cunningham of Ward 2. And I'd like to reiterate some of the things that some of my council colleagues have already said, but also like to put in there as well that if you want to meet with the Ward 2 office, please feel free to reach out. We will happily meet with you, happily sit face to face and start to build those relationships, which I do feel as though some of you think have been missing over the past couple of years for obvious reasons. So please feel free to reach out to the Ward 2 office if you'd like to meet in person.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, well, if I don't know that we need to make a motion on this right now, but I guess the general sense that I am hearing is let's get a letter put together. I will work on that with Ernesto and Ann this month, and we'll have a draft out to the commission for our next meeting. And then maybe in June or July, as we start to flush through some of our goals, we can set up an in-person. And my thought was we would assign probably 2 commission members to each member of mayor and council. And we'd put the ball in their court to actually get those meetings scheduled. So does that sound good to everybody? Okay. Okay, so the second half of this agenda item is, I was thinking maybe it'd be fun for us to get together again and have maybe another in-person happy hour. We could do it down at the Mercado. What was the name of the place we met, Ann?
Last time I believe was at Westbound at the Mercado Annex.
Westbound, right? I think it's a good location. It's outdoors. We could do it before it gets too hot. What do you guys think about that? Is that something that we did the tour a couple months ago?
I think we need to move quickly on that because it's going to get very hot very soon. I love the idea. I haven't met any of you yet. Another place is Boca on 4th Avenue that I just discovered. It's delicious, but yeah, I think I love the idea.
Okay, how about Thursday, April 21st?
I can do that.
Does that work? It's in 2 weeks.
What time are we talking, Jim?
We could do the same time as this commission meeting. We could do 4 o'clock, 4:30. All right, let's say 4:30. Westbound or Boca? I'm good with either.
I'd like to recommend Westbound just because Boca is like my favorite taco place, and their wait is 2 hours every single time, like without fail.
Okay.
Okay, Westbound it is. So we'll get an email out, Westbound 4:30 on April 21st. Okay, any other comments on the communication agenda item? All right, agenda item number 8, HCD updates. Liz and Ann.
I am happy to jump in, Liz, if you'd like. All right, I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Yes, sorry, I'm in the car. I'm in the car, so I keep having issues here. So if you can, please.
Sure. So I will say, since this commission last met, we have done a little bit of a crash course in checking some items off of the housing affordability strategy implementation list. So as Jim pointed out, in the end of March, Mayor and Council approved the impact fee subsidy program expansion. So we're in process of updating the website and getting the new information up there. We've had a fair bit of people reach out about that, which is potentially encouraging in terms of one of the goals being to incentivize affordable housing development. So that went forward. And then we ended up, the city of Tucson realized there weren't as many projects moving forward for tax credit, for applying for tax credits as we had hoped. So in the past month, the city HCD has submitted an application for a tax credit project. So we were able to, thanks to some amazing consultants and help and a few people that are in this meeting, like Sarah Megason and Allison Miller, and of course, Liz, we were able to pull together information and submit a project. We don't know how competitive it will be, but we were pretty excited about getting it in. As part of that, we created the nonprofit development arm. So that was one of the items in HAST, was to, Mayor and Council has directed us to do more self-development. And so as part of the tax credit application, but we were planning on going there anyway, we have created a nonprofit. It's called El Pueblo Housing Development. And in terms of the work that the HCD is doing for development, that will all be under the nonprofit. And so it's been a little bit of a whirlwind of a month, but happy to answer any questions. And that's sort of the main items where we'll be updating the HAST website in terms of implementation, but really trying to see some progress on those plans that we created.
Jay?
I do not have a question, but I did hear from a little birdie that HCD staff really went to heroic lengths to pull this off. So I just want to say kudos to y'all, because I'm sure you're not going to toot your own horn like you probably should. So great work, and definitely hopefully a big benefit to the city of Tucson. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Nobody does an application in 2 weeks. Nobody does that, because you have to do market studies, you have to do renderings of the building, you got to put a pro forma together. It's a tremendous amount of work, and they're typically 2 binders that are 3 inches thick. Back when everybody used to submit hard copies, it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot to pull together in a very short period of time. So that is quite remarkable. Shay?
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations also. This is really exciting. And I want to hear more about the project you submitted. Are you allowed to say?
We will. So thank you. Very, very kind words. And again, it was a lot of people. There had been enough in motion. That's why we were able, fortunately, we had already had some concepts, because it's a site that the city has owned most of. So there's 3 parcels, and the HCD has owned 2 of the 3 parcels for a while. It's at Oracle and Alturas is where we're currently doing a housing first model. And currently one of the properties is a former motor court that is currently housing persons experiencing homelessness. There's a vacant lot next to it, and the long-term goal has always been affordable housing. we had an opportunity and are under contract to purchase the No-Tell Motel. And so that is really the piece that allowed this project to be large enough to be able to, I see Joe's motion there. So we're under contract to purchase. We will be, if we get the tax credits and this project moves forward, there will be an adaptive reuse project for the main No-Tell Motel building. So keeping that historic building, keeping the historic motor court, those are adaptive reuse. And then also building a new building in the middle. So it's a 63 unit affordable housing project for older adults. And some of the units will be units where there'll be supportive services included. So we're excited. It's an infill combined with new construction, an infill combined with adaptive reuse on two major transit corridors in Tucson. So we might be slightly biased, but we think it's a good project.
Any other questions or comments for HCD? Ernesto?
Thank you. Just want to urge everyone to promote April as Fair Housing Month. It's critical, of course, to advance our agenda, our collective agenda and need for affordable housing, for low-cost housing. HCD is promoting Fair Housing Month through the amazing work of Rachel on social media. Please look for it, share it with your friends, your families, on your own networks, and again, just promote Fair Housing Month. In addition to the social media, we hope to get at least two, three op-eds in the Tucson, in the Arizona Daily Star, La Estrella Tucson, as well as the Tucson Sentinel. And we have a tentative hold for Friday, April 22nd for a virtual town hall. Mayor Romero has agreed to participate at this point, Director Morales, and we're trying to get Congressman Grijalva to participate and possibly a fourth person to discuss, again, fair housing and the need for more funding and political support. So that's your job, that's your assignment, is to go out and promote Fair Housing Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernesto. CJ.
Yeah, I just also wanted to add the congratulations for HCD and just all the work that they're doing. It's been an amazing month, so thank you all. I was wondering if you can say more about the nonprofit, and if you can't, that's fine, but I would love to hear more of what the vision for that is, just even some broad strokes.
Yeah, CJ, I appreciate that answer, and I'll say it's a work in progress in terms of figuring out exactly what we can and can't do with the nonprofit. So we are looking to, we know that City of Phoenix has a nonprofit, City of Tempe has a nonprofit, Maricopa Housing Authority has a nonprofit. And so right now we're still doing some research on how theirs works and really what we can and can't do. So we will, as we formulate that more, we'll return with more information. For the current moment, the tax credit project would run through the nonprofit. So that was the urgency in creating it. And then we mentioned we'll create it, we'll get the bare bones structure in place. And as we fill in the gaps, we'll share that with this group and get input as we move along.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Anne. And I figured you probably had Tempe on your radar, but that's one that I just know very little about, but was very inspired by, in terms of, it seemed like they really found a workaround for the inability for cities, municipalities to pass rent control, that they had a way of sort of using the nonprofit to create more affordable housing where, officially the private sector doesn't usually get to do that in the same way.
And CJ, you bring up a good point. On a future, I appreciate that the task that the commission is focused on action might be worth bringing the Tempe guy into a meeting just to talk about how theirs is functioning, just to help in terms of thinking about our own action.
Okay, Marcos.
Yes, good afternoon. I just wanted to thank and congratulate HCD on the submission of the tax credit application. You know, it's sorely needed. We don't get enough applications from Pima County. For example, this year there were 33, I think roughly, applications submitted. 3 were from Pima County. Half were from Maricopa, which was about 14, almost half. So, you know, I think wherever we have the opportunity to show increased interest, and that's been one of the criticisms from the state, is when we say, Tucson, Pima County doesn't get any light tech projects. Well, you guys aren't submitting. Developers aren't submitting for projects. So I think the effort is to be commended. Without the city submission, there would have been 2 applications from Pima County. It's already bad that we only had 3, but it's better than 2. And one of those was from another government entity, the Pasquayaki Housing Authority. So really that leaves 1 private developer that submitted. So I think there's a lot of work needed, but I think it's a great opportunity, and whether it's funded or not, the city will get the opportunity to have a follow-up meeting with the Arizona Department of Housing and continue to learn more about the process and increase their chances of getting funded in the next round. So congratulations.
Okay, thank you, Marcos. Anybody have anything else for HCD? Okay, so let's move on to agenda item number 9, the down payment assistance information. And this is Liz Wilshire. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Jim. So at a recent city meeting, I think it was an opportunity for members to give input on the new housing action plan and funding. There was a presentation. Honestly, I don't remember who did the presentation. It's like a blur. But a presentation occurred, and there was a conversation about down payment assistance. I know that we as the commission have talked about it a couple of times before and asked about its utility if it's not being spent. And so there were questions that I asked, and there was a bit of a conversation and some objections to the questions that I asked. And they are in the agenda. I will just read them off when I pull it up. I'm sorry, I have a couple windows open right now. So the questions were, how much of the allocated funding from 2021 was spent in practice for down payment assistance? The down payment assistance program is basically to assist residents who meet certain income qualifications. I think it's area median income for assistance in the down payment, in a down payment of a home that passes an inspection. What is the home purchase amount allocated for 2021 and respectively 2022? What has City of Tucson requested as an increase for 2022 to 2023? And then is there any opportunity for that down payment assistance to be converted to deposit assistance based on prior year spending? So if it's not being spent, can we please spend it? I think Jason Thorpe said he was going to look into it and send someone back with answers.
Hi, Liz. So I have sent myself back with those answers. But yeah, so glad to run through this with the group. I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share really quickly, unless Neto tells me that that is in some way a violation of any of the rules for a commission meeting. I don't think so. I think presentations, is that Neto?
Yeah, this is being recorded.
Perfect. Okay, great. So here we go. So there are 2 items, right? So Liz mentioned she had 4 questions. 2 of those are sort of data specific, and then a couple others are kind of philosophical and for the coming year. So the 2 data specific, one is the extent to which down payment assistance funding has been utilized in prior years. So this top table here shows you disbursements on down payment assistance, as well as the amount of funding committed to those activities since 2015. But we can tell you to the question of if this funding isn't being utilized, I can tell you this funding has been 100% utilized since 2015. With that said, you see huge variance, right, in some of these, in some of the years. So we've got some years that are at 500,000, 427,000. And so where that variance occurs of an increase is that we look at home investments and folks that are involved in affordable housing. No, we make home commitments, and then we in return get some program income through interest payments on loans, things like that, right? And so those, so we have some program income that we're able to allocate each year. And then whenever there's kind of funding that's not being spent in another area, we have an opportunity to flex. And so where you see these high number years, it's because the request and demand for utilization of down payment assistance exceeded our original allocation, and we were able to put either program income or reallocated funds from other areas to the cost line. So I think there is now kind of going to question number 4. We'll jump around for a second, right? If there is excess money, can that money be reprogrammed to or to security deposits for low-income renters? So the piece of if there's extra money here, I would say there isn't. We don't have any indication that our funding won't be utilized. And so what I would encourage the commission, and I would encourage you as folks, there's still one public hearing coming up for mayor and council on May 3rd. So there's absolutely an opportunity to advocate if the commission feels that's appropriate, or you as individuals, right? Public hearing, a community member, there's an opportunity to, that is an eligible activity within tenant-based rental assistance. And so there can be advocacy to increase tenant-based rental assistance. The issue there to recognize, of course, is that it then has to come from down payment assistance, affordable housing development, which are our other 2 primary uses of home funds. Development and preservation. So I wouldn't pit the 2 against each other necessarily, and kind of keep in mind that there's we're just kind of a fixed sum hole that gets stuck with, because the home funding is pretty limited. It's a little over $5 million in total annually which is shared between the city and the county. So that gives a quick update on actual spending. The other question related to an increase in home ownership value limits. And for the group, I just want to do like a 30-second primer and what that means for anyone who may not be familiar. So the home program allows us to assist low-income homeowners, right, with things like down payment assistance, or home buyers that are at or below 80% of the area median income. And there are, income eligibility restrictions, things like that. One of the restrictions that's also imposed by the federal government is a maximum amount that of the home purchase price that can be the maximum cost of a home that can be included for down payment assistance or other homeowner assistance. And so HUD sets those amounts every year, and they're based at what HUD calculates to be 95% of the median home sale value in the community. And so what we know in our community, in many communities, but sort of very rapidly locally, home value prices have increased significantly over the last year. So the determinations that HUD made last spring for the current July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022 program year have not held up to the actual cost of home sales. And so this table here at the bottom shows you in their separate rates for new construction and for the resale of existing homes. So HUD's original 2021-2022 determination allowed $243,000 as the maximum price for a home that could be purchased, new construction, assisted with home funds. and 198,000 for the resale of an existing home. Then, so we, and I want to be very inclusive when I say we here, we requested an increase to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, provided the documentation to evidence that their 95% calculation is a very inaccurate calculation of current median home sale values in our community. And so when I say we here, I want to give a lot of credit to Habitat for Humanity that really helped to lead that, and Marcos with Pima County, who definitely took the lead on compiling all of the information. It's a pretty intensive application process. And so, you know, the city's role in that was largely supportive in clicking send on a letter. But I really want to give credit to Marcos and the crew at Habitat for their work to prepare all of this. And so that request was approved yesterday, actually. So it's an exciting opportunity to update you all. And so the new values through the remainder of the current program year through June 30th are now $334,000 roughly for new construction, $299,000 roughly for resale, which is a positive increase of a little over 90,000 for new construction and a little over 100,000 for resale. So the way these determinations work, they have to be made annually. So we've passed this along to our agencies, and it's eligible to be used through June 30. And Habitat and Marcos are again working on compiling the new backup so that when we submit our annual action plans here in about a month, that we'll be including that new request for 2022, 2023. And so that it just has to be a part of our annual plan process. The numbers don't carry forward from year to year. And ultimately the amount that we're able to request isn't something that we can define. We have to take 60 to 90 days worth of all prior home sales, and based on that, calculate 95% of the median price, and then provide all of the evidence and backup to support that to HUD. So we are locked in what we can do. We suspect HUD's numbers this coming year are also not going to reflect reality, and so we're kind of prepared and queued up to submit the request for the new year.
Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate that. I know people who have done this program and weren't able to buy houses because of the necessary increase. And I just really appreciate you and Marcos and other members of the city, Habitat for Humanity and other members of the city and county for doing that very much.
I have a question, a quick question. I don't know the rules of this program. What percentage, is there limits on what percentage of the assistance goes towards the down payment?
So the assistance that we provide, there are a few different ways in which home ownership, like buying assistance, can be delivered through home. The way that both the city and the county currently deliver it is only through down payment assistance. And so the cap there sort of varies. Marcos, I'm going to look to you here to correct me. I'm real nervous about misspeaking, but I think 3 to 6%.
Well, there is no limit set by HUD as far as the direct down payment assistance that's provided to the home buyer. What HUD directs us to do is to underwrite the home buyer to make sure we're providing enough down payment assistance so that the home buyer is not cost burdened with a housing payment that's more than 30% of their income, roughly. So that's kind of the standard that we look to. And, we look to get, first time home buyers, especially well below that level, so that they're subsidized and not overburdened with the housing payment. And so, that's putting our, as a percentage of the purchase price, it's closer to 10% is what we kind of are looking at as an average. And many home buyers are coming in with additional subsidy. We're able to do up to 20%. When they're layering with other sources, they can get, around 20% of the purchase price in down payment assistance, which is really needed in this market to make the payment affordable. And, we're looking at these, the problem we were having with these limits was primarily with new construction with the Habitat Homes, Pima County Community Land Trust, and potentially Southern Arizona Land Trust, also building new homes. And, you know, they are able to subsidize the home buyers, because normally a home buyer at 80% area median income, there's no way they're going to afford, you know, $243,000 home price. But because we're able to provide the subsidies, you know, in some cases, the developer may receive a subsidy. Habitat accepts no subsidies for construction. They only use our money for down payment assistance. You know, other nonprofits like SALT and Pima County Community Land Trust may at times receive subsidy that they use to help them construct the units. And then, you know, when they're ultimately sold, they get all their money back, and, you know, through the home buyer's mortgage, which finances most of their, you know, a good portion of their construction loans and construction financing. But again, you know, the problem was primarily with the Habitat Homes and the Land Trust homes that were, you know, running up against this limit. And again, the home buyers were not going to have a mortgage of $243,000 because of the other subsidies. You know, their mortgages are, you know, $200,000 or less usually. So anyway, that was kind of the intent, so that we're not running up against this limit. Habitat did, during the course of the year, actually had to reduce the purchase price below appraised value. They had a couple of homes that appraised just above 243, but they lowered their purchase price so that the home buyers would not be shut out. And, you know, we don't expect them to continue to, you know, that's basically asking them to operate at a loss. And, you know, we don't want to have them doing that. So this is going to help greatly. So thank you.
This is great. Any questions or comments?
Hi, this is Maggie. I think that, Jim, your question may have been like, if you can, if there's any limit as to how much you can use for down payment and closing costs, and there isn't. Obviously, there's limited closing costs, and the housing counseling agencies will look to make sure that they're not excessive and abusive, and then that means that the majority of that 10% would be going towards down payment. But I think that they do have to come in with at least $1,500 of their own funds.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that there was any funding going on. I was trying to understand how the program is set up.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear this. And by the way, PCCLT will be getting a City of Tucson contract to be able to use this as of May 1st. So we need that information sheet. So thank you guys. We're excited. That is wonderful news.
Yeah. Shay?
Yeah, I was just gonna say congratulations again. That's another win. These small wins are nice to celebrate. So yeah, the market is just crazy right now. I mean, yeah, this has been needed, and it's nice to see all the departments moving so quickly to meet the needs. Thank you, everyone.
Olga?
Yeah, while we're on this action item for D, so does the city have any type of deposit assistance? Is there something we can do to create some type of deposit assistance? As a housing counselor, I feel like I'm the voice for the people right now. I'm getting calls all the time, and there are a lot of rental calls where people are on Social Security. They don't make 3 times the amount, and they don't have that security deposit. And in some cases, when they do, they don't have that extra money to be able to pay first month, last month, and so forth. I think it's great that Liz asked this question. Is there something that can be done for deposit assistance? And how can we help if there isn't?
Sure. So I think there are a few community programs that can assist with security deposits and things like that. They're often kind of flexible fund programs. I think there's something maybe operated at Interfaith Community Services there. But I do think those are all very small dollar amount. Home does allow for that type of tenant-based rental assistance, right? And so I think what it always comes back to is that question of, we have $5 million, what's the most important use of those dollars based on what we have, right? And the most impactful, that's probably better than most important. They're all incredibly important, right? There are also some other ways that some other federal program funds can be used to provide that kind of assistance. So like community development block grant, public services funding could be used that way. There's a design that allows for HUD emergency solutions grant funding to be used in that way for people who are in imminent risk of homelessness. There's some really strict eligibility in there. And so there are some other ways that it could be used. We, the city, and I think the county uses the same approach, but I don't want to speak on behalf of them. We put out calls for projects for funding in those out of those funding streams, and then evaluate the the applications that come in. And so, to my knowledge, I don't think we've seen that type of an application recently, at least at the city. And I'm glad if Anne or some others know of something I don't, but I don't think we've seen that kind of an application for funding come through.
Mindy?
Thank you. We had written a grant for rental assistance that was relatively successful. It was deposit assistance first and last month, utilities, pet, and it was presented as a loan, and our members, for the most part, paid everything back because they would not have, so many individuals would not have been able, they would have gone homeless had there not been a rental assistance for them, or missed out on their opportunity for Section 8 housing because they got a call and didn't have money saved. I'm sorry, I have a cat. Two of them, three. So I would love to write a proposal that would look like that, but I don't know who would administer it. And thank you, Olga, for bringing that up.
And to the point of funding opportunity, I do want to share, of course, our last call for projects for the People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan. Grant making was a year ago, or a little over a year ago now. Those projects have been in operation for about a year and will continue for a second year. But we'll be releasing our call for projects a little later this year, so in the fall, for applications for projects to begin next July 1. So if there are people interested in that space, I would encourage you to look at both general fund applications and community development block grant applications. And the other piece there, because I heard the reference to Section 8, and so I do want to let folks know that the home tenant-based rental assistance that we have is very specifically to support folks going into Section 8 or public housing that need deposit assistance, security and utility deposit assistance. So absolutely, if you're encountering folks who are in that need, please do be sending them to us, because that is very much how we use our home tenant-based rental assistance funding. But that may not be always widely known.
Okay, Liz Wilson.
Yeah, so I know there was mention of like independent funders for deposit assistance that aren't possibly subcontracted recipients with the city. And I have worked with those organizations. They're very difficult to get through to. If you do get through frequently, the funding has already been sent. I know Salvation Army, for example, doesn't allow applications during the winter whatsoever. I know that like PEP and Interfaith Community Services additionally usually runs out of their funding within a couple of months. And their funding is so limited that they primarily, or they only, I should say, help with deposit assistance for utilities. There is no funding that I'm aware of in the city or county that does provide rental deposit assistance. So I know that the funding is very tight, and it sounds like the home funding is not the one to tap into for that. But with the eviction moratoria having been over for a while, I'm I would imagine that people are going to be in need of more housing shortly as it becomes available.
Okay, Liz Morales.
Yes, I was just going to say the emergency rental assistance program that is administered by both the county and the city does allow for deposits. And so, because what we're finding is there's people who the landlords will not accept the rental assistance. And so instead they have to move. So that is an eligible use of those funds.
Okay, good. Is there any other comments or questions? All right, well, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Liz, for the that update. So item number 10, next steps. Our next meeting is going to be May 5th. So as usual, subcommittees, please try to meet before then. I know we have one agenda item that came up already on the discussion of the type of information we need to determine equity issues. Is there any other agenda items we'd like to see on our next meeting? Olga? You're on mute.
Sorry. I was wondering if I could ask a favor of HCD. If I know we discussed a little bit in the affordable housing subcommittee about in the HAST plan, there are home ownership opportunities. Is there a way that we can go a little bit more into detail about that? I think that would maybe clear up some confusion I think I have, and just go into more detail about what's going to be done. I know it's a little vague and maybe it's totally high level right now and it's not in place, but just curious if we can go into a little bit more detail about home ownership. I understand homelessness is first right now, housing instability, but I feel we still need to have that part of this on the forefront. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Olga. Any other thoughts on future agenda items? Okay, well, it is exactly 6 p.m. and we are adjourned. Great meeting, everyone. Thank you.